Today, the Literate Ghost celebrates St. Valentine's Day, with a look at a most appropriately titled little ghost story from the English author M.R. James. Lost Hearts. Ah, St. Valentine's Day, a perfect day for giving your heart away, be it for good or woe. But, as today's story teaches us, there are worse ways to lose one's heart. Lost Hearts was first published in the December 1895 Christmas edition of the Pall Mall magazine, Volume 7, Number 32. Written by the English scholar and medievalist M.R. James under the name of Montague James. The story was published again in James' ghost story collection Ghost Stories of an Antiquary in 1904, with another impression released only a year later in 1905. James was fond of reading his stories aloud for his friends and students at Cambridge, often at gatherings for what was known as the Chit Chat Club. There is evidence that Lost Hearts was first told, possibly in a slightly different form, as early as October of 1893 at one of these meetings. Our story begins in the September of 1811, as 11-year-old Stephen Elliott, recently orphaned, arrives at Aswarby Hall, the home of his elderly cousin, Mr. Abney, who had generously offered to take him in. The offer was unexpected, because all who knew anything of Mr. Abney looked upon him as a somewhat austere recluse, into whose steady-going household the advent of a small boy would import a new and, it seemed, incongruous element. It was said that no one knew more of the religious beliefs of the latter pagans than did the owner of Aswarby. Certainly his library contained all the then available books bearing on the mysteries, the Orphic poems, the worship of Mithras, and the Neoplatonists. He was looked upon, in fine, as a man wrapped up in his books, and it was a matter of great surprise among his neighbors that he should ever have heard of his orphan cousin, Stephen Elliott, much more that he should have volunteered to make him an inmate of Aswarby Hall. But Stephen was to learn from the housekeeper that he was not the first, nor the second child to have lived at Aswarby. There had been two others over the years, a boy and a girl, but both had run off without warning in the early hours of the morning, having not been seen or heard by the staff. It was after learning of this that Stephen began to have curious and frightening dreams. Dreams of what at first appeared to be a corpse, laying in a disused bath. I say appeared to be a corpse, until it began to move. Frightening dreams indeed. But were they dreams? After all, something had shredded his nightgown and left long scratches on the outside of his bedroom door. There was indeed a most destructive and apparently wanton series of slits and scorings in the garment, which would undoubtedly require a skillful needle to make good. They were confined to the left side of the chest, long parallel slits about 6 inches in length, some of them not quite piercing the texture of the linen. And what was it that had badly frightened the butler with its whispering and muttering in the darkness of the wine cellar? Moreover, Stephen was quite awake when on a late March evening he saw something from his bedroom window, something that absolutely terrified him. He caught sight of two figures standing on the gravelled terrace that ran along the garden side of the hall. The figures of a boy and a girl, as it seemed. They stood side by side, looking up at the windows. Something in the form of the girl recalled irresistibly his dream of the figure in the bath. The boy inspired him with more acute fear. Whilst the girl stood still, half smiling, with her hands clasped over her heart, the boy, a thin shape with black hair and ragged clothing, raised his arms in the air with an appearance of menace and of unappeasable hunger and longing. The moon shone upon his almost transparent hands, and Stephen saw that the nails were fearfully long, and that the light shone through them. As he stood with his arms thus raised, he disclosed a terrifying spectacle. On the left side of his chest, there opened a black and gaping rent. Were these visions meant to be a threat or a warning? I know that some people are probably expecting a full audio reading of the story, but I've decided against doing this since there are literally dozens and dozens of very fine readings readily available, and with which I am unprepared to compete. Of these, there are some that I find to be especially good. M.R. James' Quick Classics collection, narrated by the inimitable Shakespearean actor Sir Michael Hordern. These were originally recorded for release on vinyl records and cassette tapes around 1986 or so, but have recently been converted for streaming and download. There is also the complete ghost stories of M.R. James, narrated by the English actor David Collings. These are exceptionally good, in my opinion. Both of these series are available on Audible, but are also available at multiple bookstores. You may find them on YouTube also, but I'm not certain of their licensing status, so I hesitate to recommend them. However, there are many, many readings that are currently available on YouTube, my favorite of which would have to be those of Simon Stanhope over at Bitesized Audio Classics. As for film and television adaptations, the story has been adapted a number of times, although the first television adaptation has been unfortunately lost. In 1973, the BBC produced a wonderful and mostly faithful version of Lost Hearts for the third installment of the A Ghost Story for Christmas strand. Directed by Lawrence Gordon Clark, this production is available on DVD and Blu-ray, but only in Playback Region 2 as far as I'm aware. It is also available streaming through the BritBox service if you happen to be a subscriber. I will say that it is also available on YouTube on multiple channels, but again, I'm not certain of the licensing issues, so I hesitate to recommend these, although you can easily find them with a quick search. There was also a 2018 adaptation that moves the story to the 1940s during World War II, but I have not personally seen this version, nor do I know where it can be found. If you're anything like me, you will want to read the story for yourself. Lost Hearts is available in many, many ghost story anthologies and collections, not to mention that both Ghost Stories of an Antiquary and the Collected Ghost Stories of M.R. James are still in print and widely available in libraries and bookstores. The story, being in the public domain in much if not of all of the English-speaking world, is also freely available online from multiple sources, such as Project Gutenberg, Wikisource, and the Internet Archive, the latter of which includes microfilm scans of the original 1895 publication of the Pall Mall magazine. I will, of course, provide links in the description below so that you can find these for yourself. In conclusion, for all you lovers out there, lovers of classic ghost stories, that is, I highly recommend that you read this little tale for yourself. You won't be disappointed. From the Literate Ghost, may you have a very happy St. Valentine's Day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.